Namaste. My greetings to all the scholars, senior colleagues, and participants present at AsiaTEFL 2025. My name is Gayatri Bhagowati, and I'm a research scholar from the English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad, India. My paper for the conference is titled Mapping the Representation of Adivasi Bhasha in Assam's Multilingual Classrooms. And before diving further into the topic, into the paper, I would like to give a brief overview of what the presentation entails. So, before going into my own field observations, I would like to give a brief overview of the history of Assam, the language problem. Like you might be knowing, Assam is one of the northeastern states of India, and before independence, it included three, four more neighboring states of Northeast. So it was known as the Assam province, undivided Assam province. So I would talk briefly about the history of Assam. Then I would talk about the origin of the Adivasi community of Assam. So the Adivasi community of Assam is basically the tea tribes, the tea garden workers of Assam who primarily engage in the cultivation and production of tea. Uh, this very hardworking population is not native to Assam. They were brought to Assam 200 years ago by the Britishers when they first found tea in Assam. So that is about the Adivasi community. And I would talk about the struggles of the community, struggles that have continued over the years and struggles that continue to persist even today. And then I will go into my own field observations. I visited a couple of schools. I did some groundwork. I visited a couple of tea model schools in Assam and a couple of lower primary schools located within the tea states, and I made some observations, classroom observations, and I also interviewed teachers. So I would be talking briefly about my findings from the field, and then I would try to suggest some possible solutions that could be picked up, that could be implemented to improve the situation, the teaching and learning situation, primarily of English, teaching English to the learners from the Adivasi community. So if we look at the slide here, on the left, there is image one, which is of undivided Assam. It comprised of three neighboring states, that is Arunachal, Meghalaya, and Nagaland. And if we look at history, if we look at ancient history, the oldest records of the state of Assam date back to the 4th century, and back then it was known as Kamrup or Kamrupa. And the Boro Kacharis, the Rabhas, the Sonuwal Kacharis, and the Tiwas are the aboriginal indigenous tribes of Assam. So these are the natives of Assam. And over time, once the Ahom kingdom was established, a lot many people entered the state, and once it was the British colonizers who were ruling the state, a lot of immigration across the state happened. I mean, across the country, and also some neighboring countries also happened. So that's how the present current day population of Assam is multicultural and multi-ethnic. But primarily, Boros, Rabhas, Sonwal, Kacharis, and Tiwas were the aboriginal tribes of Assam. Yeah, the Ahoms entered Assam in 1228 AD, and the term Assam is the anglicized version of Ahom. So Ahoms, Ahom, Ahoms are the kingdom, like the Ahom kings established a kingdom in Assam, and Aham, the word Aham was used to refer to the kingdom of the Ahoms, and the anglicized version of the same is known as Assam today. That's how the state's current day name has evolved. And like I mentioned, the present day Assam was previously also inclusive of Nagaland, Meghalaya, Mizoram, and Arunachal Pradesh. Eventually, in the 1960s and 70s, all these states received independent statehood, and today they are separate states of the entire Northeast India. And the state has roots in Tibeto-Burman, Indo-Aryan, and Austro-Asiatic cultures, and therefore the elements of the same can be seen in the various languages spoken, the attires, the dresses, the customs, and cuisine found in the region. And once the Ahom kingdom declined, so there was a phase, the Ahoms ruled Assam for about 600 years, and between that period, there were multiple indigenous kingdoms that rose to power and then fell from power. So all of that happened. But eventually, in 1826, when the Treaty of Yandabu was signed, the British colonizers officially became the rulers of Assam. And they brought in a lot of changes like across the country. And primarily they found they found valuable resources in this region of Assam, such as coal, crude oil, timber, and also tea. So my paper deals with the Adivasis of Assam, and the entire existence of the Adivasis in Assam is incomplete without mentioning tea. Like the Britishers found tea in Assam in 1823. 1823 is when Robert Bruce of the British East India Company accidentally found tea in Assam, and since then, in 1839, uh, the commercial production of tea finally happened in the region, and the Assam Tea Company was established, and it has been 200 years since, and tea is one of the flourishing industries of the state. So that is about the current day Assam. So this is the map of current day Assam, where you can see that Meghalaya, Manipur, Nagaland, and Arunachal have become independent states of their own. And there is our neighboring countries include Bangladesh, Burma or Myanmar, Bhutan, China, etc. Now going to the next slide. Coming to the language problem in Assam, there have been plenty of studies in the area that report the language problem that has persisted in the state across the last 50 to 100 years. And I have referred to three main studies for this part of my paper. I've listed them in the references below at the bottom of the slide. So one key feature of the period was that during the colonial period, one could notice the presence of some divisive administrative strategies, in the sense that Assam was a region primarily inhabited by Assamese speaking people or different communities speaking their own languages, but with Assamese as the common link language. However, because there was a lot of migration, interstate migration between Bengal and Assam during the time, there were a lot of Bengali speaking people in Assam as well. And owing to the lack of experts, or perhaps due to the abundance of administrative officials from the Bengali speaking community, the British colonizers made Bengali the official language of administration and the medium of instruction in schools in 1836. And from 1836 to 1871 was a period when Bengali was the dominant language, official language of the state, which caused a lot of commotion, a lot of unrest among the people between both the communities, and it led to a sense of nationalist sentiment among all the Assamese. This also led to the Assam movement, where the people of Assam fought for their language and the linguistic rights. And around this time, when the entire state was rising uh, for this language move, towards the cause of the language move, there was even the tribals that inhabited Assam felt threatened by the movement, and there was this demand for independent statehood raised by different tribal communities, such as the Khasis and Jantias, or the people of the Lushai Hills. That's when independent statehood was eventually granted for all the states that comprised the hitherto undivided Assam province. Apart from that, during the colonial period, there was an open door policy wherein immigrants from the neighboring states or neighboring regions could freely enter the state and, stay and purchase property and conduct business. So therefore, today Assam is a multi-ethnic, multicultural region, because there have been uh, generationally people have migrated to Assam from Rajasthan, the Marwaris or Gujaratis. A lot of Baniyas people have migrated over the years, and therefore we have a lot of multiculturalism present in Assam today. And coming to the tea industry, ever since tea has been found, the Britishers were looking for people to work in the tea gardens, and the locals were found unsuitable, or the locals were not interested enough to work in the fields. Therefore, the Britishers uprooted very hardworking but poor people, and in the sense, people who were looking for job opportunities, people who could be lured to, come to Assam and start working there. So a lot of migration happened because of the tea industry as well, and these were people who had migrated from central and eastern India, from states such as Jharkhand, Bihar, West Bengal, even Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, etc., Odisha. So these are the main regions from where the tribals were uprooted and brought to Assam to work in the tea industry. So all these reasons led to the sense of identity and linguistic identity, which led to the language problem in Assam. Having spoken about the language problem and a little bit about the history of Assam, now we come to the tea industry, the flourishing tea industry. Tea is something that today Assam is recognized by. Its tea, Assam tea is very famous across the country, and it is also exported internationally. So the flourishing tea industry, and at the back of it are the Adivasis, the people who work in the tea gardens, right from the plucking of the leaves to the carrying them to the factory and the production and the packaging, everything. Entire thing is, dependent on the manual laborers who belong to the tea tribes. And like I mentioned previously, uh, Robert Bruce of British East India Company accidentally discovered tea in 1823, and ever since then, tea has been widely produced across the state. Today, there are 27 out of the 35 districts in Assam which produce tea. And if you go to the Assam government's website, you'll find around 800 officially registered tea estates, and there are thousands of other small and medium scale tea estates. They number around 50 to 60,000. So there are over 60,000 small tea estates that operate in the state. They produce CTC tea, organic tea, tea that is of export quality. So there is abundance of production of tea in the region, and it contributes to 5% of the state's gross domestic product. And now coming to the workers, so because the locals were uninterested in working in the tea industry, the Britishers had to bring in people from other states of India, and these are essentially the Adivasis of Assam. So the term Adivasis is used because the community itself does not associate its identity to the term tea tribes. So when we say tea tribes, we essentially associate them or their entire existence with the tea industry, and they opine that we tea is not our identity. We come from different regions of India. We belong to different tribal communities of India. So there are Santhalis, Mundas, Kuruks. So there are a lot of people, Orangs. There are a lot of people who inhabit the region, and there are actually 112 tribes that comprise the Adivasis of Assam, and therefore they use the term Adivasis to describe themselves and not tea tribes or tea garden workers or such terms. They are not in favor of those terms. Literature tells us that. Therefore, the term Adivasis is used to denote all these people who have migrated generationally to Assam to work in the tea gardens. And yeah, the story is not just about them being uprooted from one region and being planted in another, but it also, when we talk about the Adivasis, we cannot not discuss the conditions in which they work, the conditions in which they were brought. They had to come in cargoes in ship compartments, or even in trains without access to proper food supplies, sanitation. uh, they were brought in very difficult, very strenuous conditions, and once they reached also, they had to work under difficult situations. Like, they were essentially a victim of indentured labor, with minimum wages being given to them, and a lot of long working hours, and the living conditions that were offered to them, living conditions were not great. And it has been over 70 years of independence, but even today, this not much has improved about the living condition of the Adivasis. I mean, the government has done its part. The government continues to, work towards the upliftment of the community, but there are a lot of ways in which the Adivasis are lacking opportunities and not being able to voice their opinions, or have their people being represented at different levels of administration, to the extent that one would hope after 70 years of independence. But despite that, and having said that, they form an integral part of Assam's population and Assam's working population. They are around, today, the Adivasis are around 20% of Assam's entire population, and I'll talk a little bit more about their struggles in the next slide. As mentioned previously, the Adivasis belong to over 112 tribes, and each of these tribes have their own individual language, cultural identity, traditions, norms, and cuisine and attire, and they have their own individuality in that sense, and therefore we cannot club them into one cannot club them and cluster them into one tribe alone. There is a multicultural identity associated with the Adivasis. While language can be a problem because they all speak different home languages. Sadri is the lingua franca of the community. It is a mix of the Assam Sadri is a mix of Hindi, Bengali, and Assamese, and to some extent Bihari as well. So the language is mutually intelligible to all the tribal languages spoken by the community, and even the people speaking Assamese, Hindi, or Bengali would be able to understand Sadri to a great extent. So Sadri is the lingua franca. Now coming to the living conditions, there are two types of housing that is commonly found in the region. One is pakka housing, one is kacha housing. Pakka is the typical cemented brick mortar houses that we have, and the kacha houses would be the mud houses made of mud and thatched leaves. So every tea estate has a number of quarters allotted, created for the workers. But however, only a few of these quarters will be cement quarters, and only the older employees, the ones who have been working for a long time, the permanent ones, would be allotted the pakka houses. Largely, the rest of the workers, who often the numbers run in hundreds and thousands, they have to live in kacha or mud houses. Again, that becomes an inconvenience because Assam is a monsoon prone and a flood prone region. So living conditions are not great even today, and sanitation is a problem. There is a problem of drinking water. There is also a lack of awareness about reproductive um, health, or awareness about family planning, because of which one can notice a lot of social problems, in the sense there's a lot of cases of early marriage or teen marriage, teenage pregnancies, high female maternal mortality rate, because girls tend to get married early and have kids early at an age where perhaps the bodies are not mature enough, and therefore that leads to the not only the death of the mothers but also the children born out of such marriages. And children are often malnutrition because uh, they are born prematurely, or perhaps they don't receive the nutrition that they're supposed to get while in the womb. So all these problems persist. And coming to education, while there are schools on paper, every tea state has a school and has a hospital, but the quality of service that is offered there is sometimes questionable, and it is not ideal. The education that they receive, the quality of education that they receive, is not ideal or conducive to uplifting an entire community or a family. So these problems persist. And also, when we talk about education, we cannot skip the language problem, because these children speak their own mother tongues at home. The different the communities that they belong to have their own languages, so naturally the children speak in a particular language at home. And once they come to the school system mandates the use of Assamese as the medium of instruction, because most of our government schools are Assamese medium. So right from the textbook to the instructions of the teacher, everything is in Assamese. And suddenly, once the learners enter the school system in class 1 or 2, it becomes a problem because they are unable to understand or comprehend the teacher's instructions or whatever the teacher is explaining. So the first 2 3 years of school is a very difficult time for children, because they're trying to understand a language which is not their home language, and it is not done in a very staged or nuanced way. It is just thrusted upon them that you are supposed to learn the language and use it to learn other content subjects. So that is a problem, the language problem for the Adivasi children. Coming to wages, because is a seasonal tea is grown seasonally. There are times when tea is not grown. The production is at halt, so therefore employment is seasonal as well. So even the permanent workers struggle with this. And once when one this season where they are not employed becomes a problem, because income is not happening, because they live on they live from one paycheck to the other, in the sense of daily wages. They are given daily wages, and the family runs only when one person goes to work, and at the end of the day they get the wages. That is how families run. They don't have a system of income, monthly income. So that becomes a problem, because the wages are poor, and sometimes because it is seasonal, employment is at uh, employment is not guaranteed. So therefore people have to do odd jobs, such as working in the fields, working as house helps, and other such tasks. And of course there is always the male female wage disparity. And earlier, children also used to be employed to work in the tea gardens, but thanks to government initiatives, that has stopped significantly today. But today, the government is doing a brilliant job of monitoring whether children are coming to school. There is a biometric attendance being taken, and if children are absent for 3 days in a row, there is a system that ensures that somebody goes and checks up on them to ensure that they come to school on the fourth day. However, that being said, there are family problems in terms of, let's say, if a family has 3 children or 4 children, and the parents both need to go to work, to feed the family. And in such cases, the children who are still young, they cannot be left unattended. So the older siblings tend to stay back at home and not go to school, and take care of the younger siblings. So there are cases of like that. There are also cases when, because there is lack of money at home, children need to go and work. Not that somebody's forcing them, but they need to go and work to just to survive. So such situations also exist. Those problems exist. And apart from these, two major issues are going on currently. One is the demand for reservation. The community is, in a very peaceful fashion, asking the government to give it the scheduled tribe status, because their counterparts in other states of India uh, are entitled to ST status. However, in Assam, they have not been given the ST status yet. So that is an ongoing fight. Apart from that, while the community and also the government efforts are encouraging the community to work on creating its own textbooks, its own literary material in its own language, Sadri. However, there is the problem of the script. So whether to use the Assamese or the Roman script is again a socio-politically embedded problem, which is yet to be to reach its solution. So these are some struggles that the community is dealing with over the years. I realize that I am running out of time, so I'll be quick with the field observations. So I visited 3 lower primary schools located in the tea states or near the areas where the tea communities reside. And I also went to 3 model schools. Now, the model schools are a government initiative that began in 2022. The government is trying to create higher secondary schools or secondary schools in the tea estates, so that learners from the tea community can continue education, so that they don't have to go too far away from home for schooling. So the tea schools, model schools, are essentially schools that offer uh, education from classes 6 to 10, and eventually they will increase the levels, and also include plus 2, 11th and 12th. So far, there have been 119 tea model schools that have been established across the state, in all the districts, different districts, and they have a lot of funding, these schools. And there is the midday meal scheme till class 8 in all the government schools. So midday meal scheme ensures that the children are provided a good lunch every day of the school week, and this serves as a good motivator for the learners to come to school. It's a good incentive for them. So all these schools that I went to serve midday meal, and these are all government schools where Assamese is used as the medium of instruction. The years when the schools were established and the student-teacher ratio is mentioned here. In the lower primary schools, I observed classes 3, 4, and 5, wherein I would sit at the back of the classroom and observe just how the process of teaching and learning would happen. And for the model schools, because that is not primarily my area of research currently, I just went and sat in 2 of the English classrooms, of one in class 6 and one in class 9. And the observations that I make in the next slide are based on my field visits to these 6 schools. One of the key findings was about student attendance. So students would remain absent from school for 2 3 days of the week, and that was not primarily because they're not interested in schools, but because they have various responsibilities, in the sense that students often have to, if they're the older sibling, they often have to stay back at home and look after the younger siblings who are often infants and toddlers, while the parents have to go for work. And in other cases, if they're abandoned by parents, or if they don't have any adult caretaker, they often have to go and work, to provide for themselves, to feed themselves and their younger siblings. So such situations often keep children away from school. There's also extreme weather conditions, like if it's raining a lot, the roads are blocked. Uh, Such situations also, it's like, cause children to be absent from school on days. Now, coming to the classroom realities, one of the biggest challenges of the government schools of Assam is that the classrooms are multi-grade, in the sense that the same classroom will have 2 or 3 levels being taught simultaneously. It will be one long classroom, one big classroom with, let's say, class 1, 2, and 3 sitting together. So the teacher, and there's only one teacher handling them. So the teacher has to juggle between 3 classes, 3 different subjects, 3 textbooks, all at the same time. And because they are children, if the teacher is teaching one particular class, the other class has to sit idle, or they are assigned something which they are obviously not doing well, because because they are children, and unsupervised children turn to be chaotic and turn, they have fun among themselves, they keep talking among themselves. So this is a very logistical problem that is typical of the classrooms of Assam, where the teacher is, despite trying their best, a teacher may not be able to give individual attention to learners or even to one particular grade at a time. Now coming to the teaching and learning of English, because these are Assamese medium schools, the teachers are very comfortable in teaching Assamese as a subject. And because they use the language to teach other content subjects such as science and maths, they're quite comfortable doing it. And while I was observing, I could sense that they use good pedagogic strategies to teach other subjects via Assamese. But the moment we're talking about Hindi or English, the teachers struggle because they have their own inhibitions, their own hesitance, their own reluctance in using and teaching the language, perhaps because they're not confident themselves, or perhaps they struggle with the language themselves. So there have been instances observed where the teacher would be teaching the wrong pronunciation or the wrong usage of a particular term, and the learners would be learning the same. So the whole pedagogic strategies involved when it comes to teaching and learning in English is flawed, because we are still viewing it as a subject rather than a language in our classrooms. And coming to the learning culture, because it is viewed because English is viewed as a subject and not a language, there is the culture of rote learning. So learners memorize answers word for word and reproduce the same in the exam hall. So they pass the exams, but they're unable to use the language independently. And talking about the classroom infrastructure, there are buildings but not enough buildings. There are teachers but not enough teachers recruited. So the student teacher ratio, the multi-grade element, these are obstacles that come in the process of learning. And when we talk about learning English, again, the perception about teaching English needs to change on some level among the teachers as well. And the schools, yeah, I'll get to that in the next slide. Now, coming to the solutions, some of the practical and comparatively easy to incorporate solutions that I could think of without going into the bigger, realms of policy level changes or political or funding related solutions. These are some of the practical solutions that can be implemented at a school level. Some of these include making the curriculum more skill oriented rather than rote learning oriented. Instead of encouraging our learners to uh, memorize questions and answers, we should give them enough opportunities to speak, read and write in the language. LSRW skills must be focused in English, so that they have more authentic opportunities of using the language. And in terms of school hours, while on paper the schools function from 9 to 2, because of various reasons of let's say uh, there being a local bandh, a local holiday, or the weather, lack of staff, or other such reasons, or maybe less number of students coming to school, the schools often function without the strictness that is there in terms of timing. Sometimes the schools end early or start late, so that particular thing needs to be tapped on and monitored well. Coming to feedback, because the teachers are handling too many responsibilities at a time, they're not able to give enough attention to individual needs of the learners. So perhaps the system could have uh, perhaps one extra period in every day should be included just for teacher giving feedback, checking notebooks, so that there is no additional work in that particular hour and the teacher is only providing feedback to the learners. In that way we ensure that the learners are learning the language right. And making Sadri material more widely accessible, the government along with the community is already working to create textbooks, create literature that the learners can learn from. This process needs to be quicker and the material needs to be made more accessible across the state, so that Adivasi learners can use their own language to learn. And yeah, recruiting one teacher, at least one teacher from the community in every school, and this particular teacher should be allotted the elementary level classroom, so that the learners do not have to be immersed into the bilingual program and forced to learn Assamese, but they would rather be able to use their own language. And use Sadri to learn Assamese and then rely on Assamese to learn English. The typical MTB MLE models that we are talking about, that Mohanty, Minati Panda, and the stalwarts who are working towards multilingualism talk about, that initially you teach them in their own language and gradually you make the shift to other languages. And to do that, we need teachers from the community. So based on field observations, it is noted that recruitment from the community is not happening well. We need to have more representation from the community in the classrooms to be able to empower our learners to use their own language to learn another language. And finally, the government efforts should be made more collaborative with the local NGOs. There are a lot of NGOs working in Assam that are doing an excellent job at representing the voice of the community, creating materials. They're already into multilingual material designing. So perhaps the government could collaborate with such NGOs and then find solutions, then design materials and implement. And perhaps recruitment of teachers can also be one thing that is done with the help of these NGOs. That is all that I had to present. I thank each and every one of you for your patient listening, and I would look forward to receiving your valuable feedbacks and comments on my email ID. It's there on the slides. Thank you for listening.